Hey guys, Suli here, and today I'll be releasing a pretty simple vehicle selector, also going over how I made it, and hopefully help you guys in creating your own UIs. First, I'll just show you how it works for anyone who's not interested in like the tutorial, then we'll get to that after. So opening it up, you see I have all the list of all the land vehicles here on the left. Selecting a vehicle brings up the vehicle info on the right: weapons, passengers, max speed, inventory, and armor. Here we have different buttons for obviously loads up all the boats, and then air, all the planes and helicopters. Also, here is a flag. This will automatically load depending on your player's side. So if you're op 4, it'll load up the red flag, and independent will load up the AAF flag. Then also over here is a editable title for your server name or mission name or whatever there. That's about it. You see clicking on it and then confirm, it will automatically check to see if there's space at least 5 meters near the player, but at a maximum of 50 meters. So if there's not space for the vehicle, it just won't spawn it. And so if I was over there, far over 50 meters away from the water, and tried to spawn a boat, it'll tell you that it won't spawn. Alright, so now, I guess that's it. It's pretty simple, like I said. We'll get to how it works exactly. First, open up the mission folder here. It's the dialog folder. Contains common HPP. That holds all the base classes for the controls, which we'll go over. This is the actual dialog itself. This is custom classes that uses the base classes from common. Then here we have a SQF. This is the functions that make everything work. Now we also need the description ext, init, and obviously the mission file. We switch over to Notepad. Alright, we'll see here in the init we have vehicle dialog equals spawn compile preprocess file line numbers. This is compiling all the functions that are in the function file. Then we have this wait until script on vehicle dialog. This is just because here we have the add action that has this function on it. Now, this function is in this folder. Without the wait until, it'll read this and not know what that is if it doesn't get to it in time. Now in description, never mind that, here we have include dialog common, include dialog tutorial GUI vehicles, then class RSC titles, and again include dialog GUI vehicles HP. Now let's take a look at common. This is all the base classes for pretty much every control type there is. You can see here GUI back. That is what we're using, like all the backgrounds on the dialog. Now you can see here it has all these things: style, text, color text, font, size, EX, shadow, and all this other stuff. Now if we click over to our actual dialog, see here I've used the iGUI back a couple times, but on mine I don't have all the same variables as is common. So if I don't need to change any of the things in the common, I just leave it out in this, and it will take it from the common. So I don't have to edit it or have a giant file with all of the info on here. And also here is the vehicle SQF. Like I said, all the functions, we'll go over that shortly, but first we'll talk about the dialog itself. Here we have class RSC tut vehicle dialog. That's going to be the name. That's the name of the dialog. which you'll use to open and close the dialog. Then we have the IDD number. The IDD number is like an ID dialog. So only the dialogues themselves will have IDD numbers. There are a ton of dialogues in game, and also lots of other ones that you might use in your mission or whatever. We're going to try to give this like kind of an obscure or whatever. Moving enable, we have false. That's for you could click on it and drag it around. The rest of the stuff we don't really need. Onload would be anything that you wanted to pass through it, that you wanted the dialogue to do when it loads up. Right now we're not using any of that. We're not using onload because we're just going to do it all through the functions in the other file. Alright, here we have a list of things that we're going to be using. Controls background, controls, and object. Controls background, only ever used that before for the IGUI backs. So if you use this, then all of those names are going to go in there. Controls themselves, stuff like buttons and list boxes and everything, names you give those will all be in here. Now, the order that this is in here is the order that it will add it to the dialog, not the order that you actually have it classified down here, but the order in which it is here. Objects, we're not using any of this for this dialog. You can actually render any 3D object from the game, any model, in the UI space itself, but we won't. It's pretty cool, but we're not going to be using it for this at all. Alright, let's start with the backs. You can see here I have vehicle back, vehicle frame, resource header back, resource vehicle back, vehicle info back, and that's it for the backs. You can see it has class vehicle frame, and then the name of the resource as it's defined in common. So this is saying that class, this is the name that we gave it, and it's going to base it off of this name from common. Here you see IDC. Before I told you that dialog is IDD, the ID of the dialog. Now IDC is the ID of the control itself. You can see here it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. And that's how you can there's different ways to reference them. Sometimes you use the name itself, sometimes you use the number, all depending on what kind of commands you're using. Here we have X, Y, W, and H. This is followed by safe zone, by these safe zone commands. Safe zone is like the middle of the screen is a rectangle that's supposed to be, it stops from different resolutions and screen ratios from forcing your UI off the screen. So this, like, I'm not really 100% exactly how it works, but it's supposed to keep it from getting screwed up with different resolutions and face sizes. So this vehicle back, have it starting at 0x and 0y. That's the top left corner of the screen. We have the width as 1 and the height as 1. So that's covering the entire screen, this one. You can see here, color background, 0, 0, 0, black, and then this number here is the transparency. Killzone Kid has a really good tool on his website that you can take any format like RGB or whatever and put it into his tool, and it'll spit out the color in this format, which is great. So we do this just to kind of give it it's dark but see-through, just so it's not 100% clear, and it gives it like a nice background for the entire screen. Now you can see here vehicle frame, header back, vehicle info back. Let me switch back to game real quick. Alright, now you can see that we have, you can see how this is a little dark. That's the whole screen background that I was talking about. See, if I cancel, it's not dark like that. And we have the vehicle frame is actually this piece right here. This is added first, so it's behind everything. Then we have the header back, and the vehicle back, and the vehicle info back. These are actually just black, but see-through as well. It's a good trick to get like, it doesn't appear black because it's see-through, so it kind of has some of this color in it. It's a good trick for getting like a color that's kind of the same tone as everything else that you're working with. And I think that's it for the back, so let's go into the other controls. Alright, we see here button cancel, button confirm. These have a couple different colors for the resource shortcut buttons. This will change like when you click on it, or if you're hovered over it, it'll actually kind of like fade in and out of different colors. And I have it just set up as all the same color, this like kind of light black grayish color. I have that with all the buttons. Usually I leave it the same colors. If you have a lot of colors in your stuff and they all kind of match, you could do some pretty cool stuff with that. Then we have for the button cancel, you can see it closes dialog 1601. That's the command for closing it. You can see the ID of the whole dialog of 1601, so we'll cancel it. I got a little cut off right there. Sorry about that. So the button confirm, button close will close the dialog with this command. Then the button confirm calls the vehicle create function. And we'll go down the vehicle list. This is a RCS list box, which has a scroll bar built into it, which will be used if the list is big enough to call for the scroll box, and the scroll box will appear. This uses a command on list box select change, means when you click on something on the list box, then this goes off, and we have it spawning the vehicle info, which is showing the armor and passengers and all that in the other window. Now this has a lot of stuff: colored text, colored disabled. You can see this is a lot of different stuff you can mess with. It changes the background of the actual box, the background of the bar that is over the info that you select. You can see here I have a shadow set up 0.75. That's pretty good to do. It makes the, especially if I'm using white text, so shadow really brings it out and makes it a little easier to read. Next we have the vehicle stat text. This uses a resource structured text. You have the color text white, the color background, and this has a bunch of other stuff here which I haven't used. Also, I'll leave the text field empty because it's just going to get filled by the function when you click on it. Here we have this server title text, which is another structured text. That's actually includes the player name and then the title on the right hand side. And then here we have the resource player flag left, which is an RSC picture. And this uses text. You use the text function to fill in a path to a texture or a picture or whatever. And like in my case, I'm using a flag that is already in game where I found the location in the config. But you can put your own texture in there or your own picture in your mission file, and then put that path in there, and it'll go to that and put your picture up. Here we have the buttons land, sea, and air. You can see here that on button click, passing a variable car through the land, ship through the sea, and air through the air button. This is, I'll show you that in a second, but basically it's telling it which config entries to load into the box. That's pretty much it for this file. We'll jump into the SQF. I'll show you how everything's done. Alright, so when we click in the init, you can see I have the player action that calls the tutorial function open vehicle UI. This you could do from, I have it on the player to make it easier, but you could put this on an object or whatever you want. When this opens, it has disable serialization. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but if you need to put it in it, if you're trying to make a UI and you need this, when you try to do something, it'll say put disable serialization in there, and then I do it. That's it. Here we have player action, weapon on back player. This is just so in first person when you open it, it puts the weapon on the back to keep the weapon out of view and just makes it look a little better. Create dialogue, resource tut vehicle dialogue. This is the name of the dialogue, so this is just telling it to open it up. And we're calling the load vehicle function here, so this way when you open it up, it is already full and you don't have to click a button. So it's like a default. When you open it up, all the cars get loaded up. Now, server title CBO equals find display 1601 display control 10. This is something you're going to use a lot. So this is telling me that I'm trying to find the server title. So I'm going to look on in the display 1601, that's the IDD of the whole display. And the display control number is 10. And if you see here, there's a server title text, the IDC is 10. So it's saying that this is a structured text control that we're going to want to reference. A player profile name. GUIs, as far as I know, are always local, so just having profile name here, this is going to be the player's name. Then title text, vehicle selector title. Obviously, edit that to whatever you want. Now here we have server title CBO, so it's saying this structured text CBO. We're using this command, control set structured text, parse text, format. Now here you see it says aligned left, %1, then align right, %2, and then we have player, which is profile name player, and then title, which is this text here. So that puts the player name on the left and the title on the right. Now, player class is the type of player, that's just the class name of the unit. And then we're going into the config with that player class and getting the number for the side. This is just a different way of finding out what side the player is. Each unit class name, like B soldier or whatever, will have this number, and as you see here, in the case of 0, it's CSAT, or I'm sorry, OP4. And then case 1 is blue 4, and case 2 is independent. So here I'm telling it that depending on what side it is, this is the flag that will be shown for that side. Here you see we have flag CBO. This is display control 11. That's the resource picture. And it's saying flag CBO control set text flag, which we have here. Control set text we're using here because that's how resource picture, like I said earlier, uses the text, and you put the path of the texture into the text area. Alright, now tutorial GUI load vehicle. See here that on the vehicle list, on LB selection changed, spawns this function, tutorial GUI vehicle info. So that's this here. Oh, I'm sorry, this is load vehicle. That's from, this is on the buttons, and also when we open it up. We have kind is this select 0. We have that set as car here, and then under the button C is ship, and air is air. Then the CBO for this is the control 7. We want, every time this is called, we want it to clear the list before adding more on top. Otherwise, you'll just have a giant list of all the different types. So we use this command, listbox clear CBO. Now we're going to count. With this, we're using all the vehicles in the game, right? So we wanted to count the config file CFG vehicles. Now, that's going to give a total number, say, whatever, 200. Now, for x from 0 to count minus 1, it's count minus 1 because the array started at 0 and not at 1. So if there's 200 items total, it will actually only be 0 to 199. Now we're saying vehicle equals, so for x from 0 to count minus 1, the vehicle is the config file cfg vehicles select x. Now, if is class vehicle, that's like saying in the config file it will say class and then the class name of the object, instead of, because we don't want it to load up every single thing, we only want it to load up objects with a class name. Now here it says if get number vehicle, this get number is referencing the config here, so it's config file cfg vehicles vehicle class scope equals 2. Scope equals 2 is referencing the fact that it's accessible in game. So like there's a bunch of stuff in there like paper car and motorcycle, which was never added completely. Their scope numbers are like 0 and you can't access it in game, so having it in the list would be pointless. Now class here, we're going to say class equals config name vehicle. Here vehicle is the entire config entry. We're going to say config name vehicle will be just the class name of the vehicle. So we'll say if class is kind, then. This is saying if the vehicle that it's doing at the moment, say an off-road, is kind of car, which we passed through, then it's going to load up, then it's going to add it to the list. If it's looking at a boat, then it's not a kind of car, then it won't add it to the list. That's how we separate the things with the buttons and when we first open it up. Now here you see index equals cbo lb add get text cfg vehicles class display name. This is in the config files. Everything has a display name. It's all in the same spot. CFG, whatever, vehicles, weapons, then the class name, and then under display name, and that's the name you see. You don't want it to display the class. You want it to display the display name so it looks a little better. Now, CBO LB set data. This stores a string into the list. Into the list box. So you can also set value, as you could store a number in there, and you could also set data, which is a string, into there. This is saying LB size CBO minus 1. This gets the entire size of the list box. So if this is the first one that's being added, the list box size is only 1. So with minus 1 saying 0. What that does is that's the index spot in the list. So it's setting the data for the first item in the list to that string, which we're passing as class. I don't know if I'm explaining this well enough. Hopefully you guys get that. Then picture, we see here picture, we're getting the text for that class under picture, which is a path to a texture. And then we're setting the CBO set picture, the same thing, LB size CBO minus 1, which is the same slot in the index. We're setting it that picture. And because this is for x from 0 to count minus 1, this is doing it over and over again automatically through the entire config file and just adding these things one by one over and over again and setting the data. Alright, next we have tutorial GUI vehicle info. This is being called when we click on the list box here. When you select the list box, it's going to call, when you select a vehicle from the list box, it's going to call this function here. Now here we have disable serialization also. Now ID LB curse select 7. This 7 is the IDC of the list box itself. So it's saying that ID is the number in the list box that is currently selected. That's the same thing as like the number here, where it's set the picture and set the value. Let me switch back to game really quick. So by that, so this is the first one. This would be 0. This is the index number. Imagine this whole list box is a giant array. This is select 0, select 1, select 2, select 3, select 4. So this is saying that if clicking on this in the script would have the ID come up as 0. Now let's switch back to that. Now, ID number of the selected item in the list box for the control 7. Now the class is the data that we saved into that ID number in the control that has the ID 7. We have it here, CBO set data class. Now we have the class name of the item that's selected. Here we have weapons, is just an empty array just to have that. Now we have weapons class, get array. This is through the config file. In the weapons section, this is what weapons are in the vehicle. Now we get the name of that weapon that we want to display in the list by going into the weapons config as opposed to the vehicles config, because we're looking at weapons, and getting the display name from there. And now we add to this empty array weapons, we're adding the name of the current weapon that's on there for each weapon class. So the weapons class, this is an array of different weapons. A lot of times, a lot of vehicles have more than one weapon. Now we're saying here we have if is class config file blah blah M2 turret. As far as I know, the only vehicle with the M2 turret is the off-road armed. That's a turret that's on the back of the off-road. So if it's basically saying if it's an off-road, if it has this class, then the weapon array is this. That's where the weapons are. Else, the weapon array is under turret's main turret, turret's front turret, or turret's rear turret. This combines all of these into one big array and then gets the names of them all here, adds them to the weapons array here, and then stores it. Here we have crew count, model, max speed, inventory space, armor, and this is just getting all the stuff from the config of the class under those names. There's a lot of stuff in the config. Pretty cool, the different things that you can find out about the vehicles and the different information that you can display, and not just for vehicles but for weapons and magazines and ammunition and everything. Here the text CBO, this is the ID number of the vehicle info text box that we have. And this separator is parse text and just a bunch of dashes. We're just using this as a separator to make it look good. Now we have here text CBO, control set structured text, parse text format. Then all of these things that all this information that we have. So we see it says weapons, crew count, max speed, inventory space, armor, and separator. So here we have align left weapons and then a break. Then align left %1, which is the weapons. Then we have the separator %6, which is the last one here. So it puts the weapons, a break. It puts the text weapons, a break, and then the actual weapons. Then the separator, a break, passengers, and then how many passengers it holds. Then another separator, a break, max speed, and then a separator and a break, on and on until the end of the info. I guess that's pretty much it for that. Here we have the vehicle create. That's called from when you hit the confirm button. So here we say the ID vehicle, same thing as before. The ID vehicle is the ID number of the selection on the list box with the ID C7. Class vehicle is the data of that selection. We have empty position is position player, find empty position. This number here is the minimum distance from the player, and this is the maximum distance of the player, and then the class of the vehicle. What this does is it finds a spot where this class vehicle can fit with a minimum distance of 5 and a maximum distance of 50. For ships, if it's not on water, then it automatically knows that it can't fit a boat in this position because there's no water there, which is great. Now we have if count empty position equals 0, which means because the empty position comes up as an array, if there is no empty position, then it'll be an empty array, so the count of the array is 0. So if there is no empty position, then you get a hint vehicle cannot be spawned here. Else, vehicle create, class of the vehicle at empty position, and then it closes the dialog. And that's pretty much it. But it's a simple dialog. Hopefully it's not too confusing. I'll put in the YouTube video in the description. I'll start a forum post on Bohemia's forums. Also, I'll link Killzone Kid has some great tutorials, and there's a couple other really good ones. I'll link in the description up here, and then also, like I said, the forum post that I'll create. And you guys can ask me any questions on there. Hopefully I can answer them all. And like I said, hopefully this wasn't too confusing for you guys and you understand. Alright, that's it. Take care.